Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're gonna be looking at aspirin.
Aspirin.
Yeah, you know that little white pill that pretty much everyone has in their medicine cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
But as we'll see, it has a long and fascinating history, spanning centuries and cultures and
Absolutely.
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great story. We think of aspirin as this modern invention, but
Right.
its roots really go back thousands of years.
Yeah, it's really a deep dive into the history of pain management. I think more than anything.
It is.
And it all starts with the tree.
It does. It all starts with the willow tree.
Yeah.
And different cultures have used it throughout history. The ancient Sumerians, for example, they were already using willow leaf concoctions to treat pain as far back as 5000 BC.
So they were like brewing it into a tea or something.
Yeah, they would make decoctions basically like a strong tea, and they would drink that for pain relief.
Wow. And how did they? I mean, how would they even figure that out?
That's a great question. A lot of it was probably trial and error observation. They would see maybe animals eating certain plants and notice the effect.
Right.
And then they would, experiment themselves. And
Yeah.
and over time, they would build up this knowledge of what plants had what properties.
That's amazing. And they didn't even have, double-blind studies and all that stuff.
No, they didn't. But they were very observant and they were able to pass down this knowledge through generations, which is pretty remarkable.
So willow was like the go-to pain reliever in the ancient world.
It was definitely one of the most popular and widely used remedies, and we even see evidence of it in ancient Egypt.
Really?
There's a papyrus from 1550 BC that actually mentions willow for medicinal use.
Oh, wow.
So it really was a global phenomenon even back then.
Yeah. And speaking of ancient medicine, we can't forget about Hippocrates.
Of course, the father of medicine.
Yeah, he was prescribing willow bark for fever and pain back in the 5th century BC.
Yeah, around the.
And that knowledge, it was passed down for centuries.
It was.
Really solidifying willow bark's reputation as this natural remedy.
Absolutely. And it shows you how powerful these ancient remedies really were.
Yeah.
That they stood the test of time.
Yeah, but how did we go from, chewing on willow bark to the convenient little pill that we know as aspirin today?
Well, that's where the story takes a turn towards the more scientific.
Right.
In 1763, an Anglican pastor named Edward Stone presented a paper to the Royal Society of London. And in this paper, he documented willow's ability to reduce fever.
Okay.
And this was a big deal because it really sparked more structured scientific inquiry into willow's properties.
So a pastor was the one who kind of kicked off this whole scientific revolution around aspirin.
In a way, yes. He was one of the first to really document it in a formal way.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that great discoveries can sometimes come from unexpected places.
Right.
Where you don't necessarily have to be a scientist to make important observations.
Okay, so Edward Stone, he kind of gets the ball rolling, but I'm guessing there's still a long way to go before we get to the actual aspirin that we know and love.
Oh yeah, definitely. The 19th century was a period of intense research.
Yeah, okay.
Scientists were really trying to isolate the active ingredient in willow. And there were a lot of key players involved. First there was an Italian pharmacist who managed to isolate salicylate.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't pure. Then a French pharmacist refined the process, and around the same time, another scientist managed to extract salicin from meadowsweet.
Oh, wow.
Which is a completely different plant.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So there was a lot of parallel research happening. And finally, a chemist figured out how to obtain salicylic acid.
Okay.
Which was a huge step forward.
So it was really a collaborative effort.
It was a global effort.
Wow.
And it really shows you how science often progresses. It's not always one person working in isolation. It's often a team effort.
Yeah, but even with salicylic acid, we're still not quite at the aspirin that we pop into our mouths today, are we?
Not quite, but we're getting closer.
Okay.
The key turning point happens in 1898 with a chemist named Felix Hoffmann. Yeah, he was working at Bayer.
Okay.
And he was driven by this personal mission to find a solution for his father's rheumatism.
Ah.
Yeah, his father was suffering and he wanted to help.
Okay.
And so he set out to find a better pain relief.
Okay.
And what he did was he rediscovered and refined a salicylic acid.
Salicylic acid.
Which is the chemical compound that we now know as aspirin.
Okay.
So he basically took salicylic acid and he modified it to make it less irritating to and that's how aspirin was born.
That's incredible. So it was really a personal mission that led to this huge breakthrough.
It was, and it's a great example of how personal motivations can really drive scientific progress.
Yeah.
sometimes it's not just about pure intellectual curiosity.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
about wanting to help people.
Absolutely. So we have acetyl salicylic acid, but how did it become the aspirin that we know and love today?
Well, that's where Bayer's marketing savvy.
Okay.
They came up with the name aspirin.
Okay.
And they chose it very carefully. You know, they wanted a name that was easy to remember.
Right.
And that sounded, scientific and trustworthy.
Right.
And so they combined a few different elements. You know, they took the A from acetyl.
Okay.
The spira from Spirea ulmaria, which is the Latin name for meadow.
Meadowsweet, huh?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
It's a plant that also contains salicylate. And then they added the in, which was a popular suffix for medicines at the time.
Interesting. So it's like a little Frankenstein monster of a word.
It is. It's a very clever name.
It is. It really is. Okay, so we have the name, but did people immediately jump on the aspirin bandwagon?
Not right away. You know, it took some time for it to really catch on.
Okay.
Initially, Bayer focused on marketing aspirin to doctors and dentists. And as luck would have it, a dentist who was out of his usual pain reliever, he gave aspirin to a patient who was suffering toothache.
Oh, wow.
And the results were pretty amazing.
Really?
Yeah, the patient experienced such fast pain relief that the dentist started recommending aspirin for neuralgia, which is a type of nerve.
So one toothache kind of helps launch aspirin into the spotlight.
You could say that, yeah, it was a lucky break for Bayer.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it really shows you how sometimes, serendipity can play a role in scientific discovery.
Absolutely.
It's not always a straight line from research to success.
Yeah, well, this is already a pretty fascinating story, and it sounds like there's still a lot more to come.
Oh yeah, definitely. We've only just scratched.
Okay, well, listeners, stay tuned because we're gonna be diving even deeper into the history of aspirin.
We are.
And we're going to be talking about some of the more recent discoveries and controversies surrounding this little white wonder drug.
Absolutely, it's a story full of twists and turns.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were talking about that lucky dentist who gave his patient some aspirin for a toothache.
Right. He basically stumbled upon one of aspirin's most important.
Yeah, and what was that?
Well, it turns out aspirin isn't just a pain reliever.
Okay.
It also has these amazing blood thinning properties.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And it all started with that dentist's observation.
So how did he even figure that out?
Well, it wasn't actually the dentist. It was a doctor named Lawrence Craven.
Okay.
And this was in the 1940s.
Okay.
And he was an ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Okay.
And he noticed that his patients who were chewing aspirin gum.
Aspirin gum.
Yeah. After having their tonsils removed, they seemed to bleed more than usual.
Oh, wow.
And at first, this was a concern.
Right.
But Dr. Craven, he was a very curious guy. And he started to think, well, maybe there's something more to this.
Okay.
Maybe aspirin is actually doing something to the blood. And so he started to investigate, and sure enough, he discovered that aspirin acts as an anticoagulant.
Anticoagulant?
Yeah, which means that it prevents blood clots.
Oh, wow. So it thins the blood.
Exactly.
Okay. And how does it do that?
Well, it inhibits something called platelet aggregation.
Platelet aggregation.
Yeah, which is basically the clumping together of blood cells.
Right.
And when these blood cells clump together, they can form clot,
right,
which can block arteries and lead to all sorts of problems.
Like heart attacks and strokes.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So this is a huge discovery.
It was a game changer.
Yeah.
Because suddenly aspirin wasn't just about easing pain.
Right.
It was about potentially preventing serious cardiovascular problems.
Wow.
Yeah, and this discovery really opened up a whole new avenue for aspirin. And by the 1980s, large-scale studies had really cemented aspirin's place as a key player in cardiovascular care.
That's amazing. So it's really one of those accidental discoveries that ended up having a huge impact on medicine.
It is. It's a classic example of serendipity in science.
Yeah, it's like penicillin and all those other great discoveries.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about how aspirin was discovered and we've talked about some of its uses. But there's also a bit of controversy surrounding aspirin's discovery, isn't there?
There is, yeah. There's some debate over who truly deserves credit.
Okay.
We often hear about Felix Hoffmann,
right,
as the discoverer of aspirin.
Right.
But some people argue that another Bayer chemist, Arthur Eichengrun. Yeah, that he actually played a more significant role.
Really?
Yeah, and the historical record is a little bit fuzzy.
Okay.
Eichengrun was Hoffmann's superior.
Okay.
And some people believe that he was actually the the mastermind behind the research.
Interesting.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Eifengrun was Jewish.
Okay.
And he faced persecution during the Nazi era.
Oh, wow.
And so his voice was silenced for many years.
That's terrible.
It's a tragedy. And it wasn't until 1949, just a year before his death,
Wow.
that he was able to publish paper asserting his role in discovery.
Wow. So it's possible that he never got the credit that he deserved?
Yeah. It's possible. Yeah. And it's a reminder that history is often written by the victors.
Yeah.
And that sometimes, the contributions of certain individuals are overlooked or even erased.
Absolutely. Well, it's important to remember those unsung heroes.
It is.
Okay, so even with the controversy, one thing is clear: aspirin has become a global phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the most widely used drugs in the world.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about how it's produced in massive quantities.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Every year, enough aspirin is produced to give every single person on Earth
Wow.
multiple doses.
Oof, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's not just about pain relief anymore, is it?
No, not at all. Aspirin is used for all sorts of things these days.
Like what?
Well, it's still used to manage pain, of course.
Right.
But it's also used to reduce inflammation.
Okay.
To prevent certain cardiovascular issues, and it's even being investigated for its potential role in preventing certain types of cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a very versatile drug.
It really is. It's incredible how this little white pill, derived from ancient remedies, continues to evolve and surprise us with new applications.
It's a testament to the power of scientific inquiry.
Yeah.
And to the fact that we're still learning new things about even the most familiar drugs.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating journey so far.
It has.
But we're not done yet.
No, we're not.
We're gonna take a quick break.
Okay.
But when we come back, we're gonna be talking about the future of aspirin.
The future, yes.
And how cutting edge technology like artificial intelligence is poised to revolutionize the way we discover and develop new drugs.
It's an exciting time.
I can't wait. So listeners, stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. So we've talked about aspirin's past, we've talked about aspirin's present, and now it's time to talk about aspirin's future.
The future of aspirin, it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and a big part of that future is artificial intelligence.
AI, absolutely.
Yeah, so how is AI going to change the way we discover and develop new drugs like aspirin?
Well, we've talked about how serendipity played a role in aspirin's discovery.
Right.
But with AI, we can actually start to be more systematic and targeted in our approach to drug discovery.
So no more happy accidents.
Well, happy accidents are always welcome.
Of course.
But AI can really help us to speed up the process
Okay.
and to increase our chances of success.
So how does it do that?
Well, AI can analyze massive amounts of data.
Okay.
Clinical trial results, genetic information, all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
And it can identify patterns that would take humans years to find.
Okay.
And it can also predict how a certain compound might behave in the body.
Wow. So it's like having a superpowered research assistant.
It is, exactly.
That's amazing. And what about safety? Can AI help to make drugs safer?
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges in drug development is making sure that drugs are safe.
Right.
And AI can help us to identify potential side effects early on.
Okay.
And to design drugs that are less likely to cause harm.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable what AI can do.
Oh, it's like personalized medicine tailoring treatments to each individual.
Exactly. That's the ultimate goal.
Wow.
Wow.
So how could AI specifically impact the future of aspirin?
Well, for starters, AI could help us to uncover new use for aspirin.
Okay.
We already know that it's effective for pain relief, inflammation, and cardiovascular protection.
Right.
But AI could help us to understand these benefits on a much deeper level.
Okay.
And it could also help us to identify new applications that we haven't even thought of.
So aspirin could be even more versatile than we currently realize.
Exactly. And AI could also help us to find entirely new compounds that have aspirin-like properties, but with even better safety profiles.
So it's like taking the lessons we've learned from aspirin and using them to design even more effective treatments.
Exactly. It's like building on the foundation that aspirin has laid.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in a way, aspirin's story is coming full circle. It started with ancient wisdom, observing nature's healing powers.
Right.
And now, centuries later, we're using cutting-edge technology to delve even deeper into those mysteries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful.
It is. It really is. Well, this has been an incredible journey.
It has.
Thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the world of aspirin.
It's been my pleasure.
And listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of this little white wonder drug.
We hope you learned something new.
We hope so too. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.